My ex-wife demanded more alimony after learning about my promotion, but I exposed her infidelity and turned the tables before karma struck her down. Before I begin, let me tell you a little about my marriage with my ex-wife, Julia. Julia, a 30-year-old female, and I, a 30-year-old male, met when I was in college. It was pretty much love at first sight for me, but it took her a while to agree to go out with me. Once she did, we never broke up, and we ended up getting married. We'd been together for almost 7 years until she decided that she wanted a divorce and could no longer stay married to me. I didn't want to give up on this, and I promised her that whatever was bothering her, we could work on it together. I even suggested couples counseling to her, even though I didn't think there was anything wrong with our marriage. But she didn't agree to it and said that she was just done and wanted out. She told me that she was bored, the spark was gone, and she just didn't feel anything for me anymore. This was a punch in the gut for me because I still had feelings for her when she decided to get divorced, but I wanted her to be happy, so I didn't contest the divorce. She wasn't working at the time, and I was, so she got alimony as well. She demanded a ridiculously high amount. Since I was still hoping that maybe she would come back to me, I let her get away with it as well. I do regret that decision now, but back then, I was in over my head and agreed to whatever terms she and her lawyer set forth just so she would be happy. I was pretty much a sucker for her. That was almost 2 years ago, and things have changed considerably since then. I started hitting the bottle in the aftermath of my divorce because I was straight up depressed, and I couldn't imagine a life without Julia. It took a lot of therapy and strength to bring myself out of depression and resume normal life. She didn't even check up on me after she left, which was eye-opening for me because I always felt like she loved me too, even though she was really out of my league when we first got together. After the divorce, I realized I had always loved her more, and that's probably one of the major reasons why our marriage had come undone. I started losing feelings for her slowly after the divorce, and after a point, I stopped feeling anything for her at all. That was a major turning point for me romantically since it allowed me to stand up for myself. I tried to contact her and discuss the alimony arrangement with her in person so that we could modify it and go a little lower than the amount she decided upon. But she wouldn't agree to it and told me that she had never worked after graduation because she was too busy being a stay-at-home wife for me. She said that she deserved this, and I couldn't argue with that because she had always been a great housewife. So, I didn't push much harder. I wasn't happy with the arrangement, but I had to deal with it. After that, we didn't keep in touch. It was only the monthly alimony payments, and when that was done, we didn't speak for the rest of the month. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, she somehow found out that I had received a huge promotion and a raise at work. I guess some idiot from our friend circle had blabbed, and that's how the news got to her. After she learned that, she decided that she was going to demand a higher amount and filed a petition to increase the amount without even consulting with me first. I was taken aback by surprise, so I decided to reach out to her informally before the legal proceedings began. I asked her if the amount she had been receiving for so long was not enough and now she had to come after me for even more and rob me blind. To that, she told me that she wasn't willing to speak to me without a lawyer, and that was the end of our conversation. It was infuriating to think that I worked so hard day and night, but for some reason, she felt that she was entitled to so much of my money only because she'd been a good wife to me for a couple of years. Towards the end, she didn't even do that because she just left me without a proper explanation or even a real goodbye, and I never received any closure for our breakup. I was really annoyed that she was coming after me with her lawyer since I felt like I was going to lose to her this time as well. At least the first time around, it was my choice to go easy on her. But after the first mediation session itself, I could tell that her shark of a lawyer was not going to leave any stone unturned to back me into a corner, and eventually, I would just have to give in to their demands. I was getting frustrated, but then something crazy happened, and it felt like the universe really had my back this time. I met with a couple of my old school friends recently for dinner and drinks, and I couldn't help but talk about how Julia was totally screwing me over and how frustrated I felt about all of it. The restaurant we were hanging out at was pretty fancy and quite a distance away from where I lived, so I didn't expect to run into anybody that I knew there. So, I was name-dropping Julia left and right without being concerned about anybody overhearing my conversation. I guess after a while, I kind of got drunk, and when I get drunk, I get really loud too. So, I started cursing her out along with my friends, and we were all having a great laugh about it, which, in hindsight, is pretty embarrassing, but it wasn't at that moment. Anyway, while we were laughing, a guy who I didn't know approached our table, and he looked pretty upset. He then asked me if I was talking about Julia and used her real full name. I was intoxicated, so I didn't think it through and told him that I actually was talking about that very person and that if he knew her, then I was really sorry for him. Then I referred to her as a gold digger who didn't even have the decency to tell me when she lost feelings for me and just left without an explanation after 7 years of being together, as if I meant nothing to her. It's all very embarrassing to put it out here, but for the sake of the backstory, I have to mention these things. Apparently, that's how Julia's current boyfriend found out that she'd been divorced before, because the guy who I met at the restaurant the other day happened to be her boyfriend's brother. This explains why he was so upset and walked away abruptly after I showed him a photo of us in my wallet to prove that I still hadn't moved on entirely, even though she had been nothing but horrible to me. She called me a day after that and yelled at me for about half an hour. She told me that because of my stupid behavior while I was drunk, her boyfriend was not speaking to her anymore. I didn't think that it was my fault, but she insisted that I needed to do something and fix this, since I shouldn't have been yelling at a restaurant about how cruel she was as a person in the first place. Then she cursed me out for a couple of minutes and disconnected the call. I was really mad because I felt that it was ridiculously unfair of her to put the blame on me when she was the one who had been lying to her boyfriend. She had been really mad at me during that conversation and, while shouting at me, had referred to her boyfriend by name a couple of times. I'll call him Jeremy now. Now that I knew Jeremy's name, I couldn't help myself, and I went online to stalk and find out more about this Jeremy guy. Unfortunately, since she and I didn't have each other added to our socials, I had to ask a common friend of ours to let me use her account so I could do my digging. It was difficult to convince her, but I told her that this could probably save me from going bankrupt from the alimony, which it eventually did, and I had to really lay it on thick while manipulating her. Then she finally agreed to let me use her account. While going through his account, I realized that this guy was school friends with a cousin of Julia's, and I figured that these two probably met at her cousin's wedding. I hadn't attended that wedding with Julia because I'd been down with the flu, but she insisted on going because, apparently, she and her cousin were really close. I remember that incident distinctly because I was very disappointed that she left me while I was sick so she could attend some cousin's wedding. Jeremy had a couple of photos on his feed from the wedding, and Julia was featured in almost every single one of those photos. Jeremy had no ties to Julia's life back here because he lived in a completely different place, and he didn't know any of the people that Julia knew, so she wasn't going to get caught unless her own family decided to rat her out, which they definitely wouldn't. Nobody here knew about Jeremy. It also didn't matter if they followed each other on social media because she followed a ton of people, and her being featured in a couple of photos on some guy's feed who attended the same wedding as her wasn't exactly incriminating evidence of her cheating. But I knew the truth now, and I knew that I had to somehow get to the bottom of this and prove that she had been cheating on me while we were married before she filed for the divorce. Maybe then I could have a real shot at getting the alimony cancelled altogether. I called my lawyer up immediately when I found out that she had known this guy even when we were married, and now she was with him, so there was definitely something suspicious going on. He told me that he would look into it, and he came through. He traced Jeremy down and then spoke to a couple of people who lived in his neighborhood and confirmed that Julia had been living with Jeremy ever since she filed for divorce. The people on his street told him that Julia had moved into Jeremy's house about 2 years ago, and it aligned perfectly with the time around when she told me that she wanted a divorce and moved out. So, this is obviously where she went, but that wasn't even our winning hand. Apparently, she even had a 2-year-old son now, and when my lawyer told me about that, I knew for a fact that we'd finally won. There was no way that she was getting out of this one, and I was thrilled that I could finally prove that she was a cheater and get out of paying her because she really didn't deserve it. The last time we met, her lawyer finally had to concede that she didn't deserve the alimony since her client had been cheating. I guess she didn't want to involve the kid because she knew for a fact that the kid was Jeremy's and not mine, so there'd be no point in a paternity test. Had the kid been mine, she definitely would have come after me earlier to demand child support. She had been engaging in infidelity, and that disqualified her from receiving alimony. That was it. I guess I should have left it at that after I got rid of her, but I was feeling particularly vengeful, and I guess that's where I crossed the line because what I did afterward wasn't great. After the last session, I really wanted to get back at Julia because I still hadn't felt that satisfaction kick in. So, I decided to text Jeremy and rant to him about Julia. In my defense, I was kind of wine drunk after celebrating my big win against her, and I wasn't thinking straight. It's not a great defense, but at least it explains why I did what I did. I texted Jeremy that evening, telling him that even though I had loved Julia more than anybody else in this universe ever could, I still didn't envy him for having her now and stealing her away from me because he didn't steal my wife, he just stole a gold digger. I suggested that maybe the only reason she even left me and moved in with him was because of the child, and had it not been for her pregnancy, she probably would have stayed with me, and they would have ended as a short fling. But she knew that she'd get caught if the kid was born and it ended up looking nothing like me, so she opted for the safer way out and latched onto him instead. I wished him luck and said that he and Julia should separate for the sake of the kid because nobody should ever have a mom like that. Now, that's exactly what's happening, and I couldn't regret what I said more. Julia's obviously blaming me for all of this, and she really should because it is technically kind of my fault since I'm the one who texted Jeremy, which was straight up out of line. She also put up a post about how I was sabotaging her life just to get revenge, which all our friends agree with. I think that's kind of weird in a way. Isn't me trying to get revenge on her okay because, if you really think about it, she is the one who cheated on me first, and yet nobody is talking about that? People are just lashing out at me for what I did, but nobody is discussing what she did, even though she was the one who started screwing everything up for me, and what I did really pales in comparison. I don't really understand what to do about this now, and I would appreciate some advice on the situation. Am I the asshole for suggesting that my ex-wife's current boyfriend leave her as she left me? Hey guys, first of all, thank you so much for all the advice, and I appreciate every single one of you who replied or commented on my post. Yes, most of you are correct about the assumption that I have a drinking problem. I don't really know what to say about that apart from the fact that I guess I should get professional help for it. I never really considered how this was affecting my life before I made this post, and so many of you pointed that out in the comments. If I had not been drinking, I wouldn't have messed up that many times and would have nothing to regret. I guess that's true, and I definitely will try and work on it. It's not like I can't function without drinking, but when I do get drunk, I kind of go off the rails, and that's not okay. I can see the way it's been negatively impacting my life, and I really want to get better before it turns into alcoholism. That being said, I have decided that I'm not going to apologize to Julia for very valid reasons. She hasn't apologized to me for anything yet. She didn't even apologize to me after it was revealed that I knew about her affair with Jeremy. She was just disappointed that she was going to lose out on the alimony, but she didn't seem to regret anything else. After she left me, I was a complete mess, and it took me a real long time to get back up on my feet and try to live life normally. She never even bothered to look back and see how I was doing, and that's what hurt more than anything else because she and I had been together for so long, and yet she didn't think that I was worth looking back at. I mean, we'd been friends before this, so she probably should have valued that at the very least, but she didn't and just left without thinking about me or all the time that we had spent together. She didn't even have the guts to tell me the truth about why she was leaving and left me wondering for ages about what I could have done better and what I did wrong. So now, I don't really regret what I did to her. She completely deserves it, and now she's going to feel just as hurt as she made me feel. It's just the circle of life. So, something happened a couple of hours ago, and I don't know how to feel about it. It's been almost a month since I first posted here, and Julia and I haven't really spoken after she was served. I assumed that she got busy with her life afterward because now she also had to worry about what would happen with her son and if she could retain custody of him or not. So, it was pretty surprising for me when she called me a couple of hours ago. Luckily, I decided to record the call in case she said something weird. At least then I would have proof of what she said. As soon as I picked up the call, she started shouting at me and told me that I had ruined her life and that I deserved nothing but the worst. She told me that she was glad that she had left me because she couldn't imagine spending the rest of her life with a loser like me, and the only thing that she liked about me was my money, but even that wasn't worth staying for after I turned into the clingy and annoying husband once we got married. She told me that she had cheated on me not just with Jeremy but with several other men before, and that I had been too stupid to find out. But this time, she had to leave as she got pregnant, and she actually felt relieved when she saw the positive pregnancy test because now she finally had an excuse to dump me and go to somebody that she actually liked. I hadn't even started to process everything that she was saying when she moved on to talking about how I had taken the two things that she valued the most, her partner and her son. Now she was caught in a custody battle, which was all my fault because I had put that idea into Jeremy's head. I didn't exactly understand how this was completely my fault. She could have just been honest right from the get-go and not lied to him about her marital status when she met him, or at least have come clean after they got together. If you're raising a kid with somebody, I think you should at least be honest with them. Pretty basic, I would say, and if she didn't know any better, then that's on her, not on me. So, it's pretty unfair to blame me for her own stupid decisions. She is an idiot and an even bigger one for calling me up after so many days just to rub in the fact that she's a serial cheater. I felt bad for a while after the call ended because she told me that she truly wished that she had never even met me because I was the worst thing that had ever happened to her, and that really hit hard. So, I tried really hard not to end up crying on my couch again over her, which I had done several times already over the course of these past 2 years. But I was trying to bring about a good change in my life, and I didn't want to go back to my old ways. However, I have been thinking about sending the voice recording from the call to Jeremy so that he knows what he's up against, and maybe that would help him with the custody battle. I'm not the best judge of whether Julia is fit to be a mother or not, but after everything that has happened, I think it's okay for me to go ahead and try to get back at her for everything that she did. I'll just think of it as social service and help Jeremy out. A few weeks back, In the haze of a victorious night celebrating my triumph over Julia in a heated competition, I found myself inebriated and impulsive. Emboldened by the liquor coursing through my veins, I sent Jeremy a text, a message born from the reckless abandon of the moment. It was a message I later regretted, laden with words I wished I could retract. For days, I received no response, and the silence gnawed at me. Curiously, Jeremy hadn't blocked me, which struck me as odd given the intensity of our last exchange. That small mercy, however, paved the way for me to reach out again, this time with a clearer head and a humbler heart. I crafted an apology, owning up to the rashness of my drunken words, and included a recording that I thought might be useful for his ongoing custody battle. I made it clear that he was free to use it as he saw fit, leaving the decision entirely in his hands. With that, I stepped back, choosing not to dwell on whether he would act on it. My part was done, Jeremy had all the information he needed, and Julia's fate was no longer my concern. Time passed, and whispers of the fallout began to reach me, albeit through unexpected channels. Word on the street, as relayed by a couple of acquaintances, was that Julia had lost custody of her son. Her parental rights were reduced to supervised visits, a harsh blow that spoke volumes about the unraveling of her carefully curated facade. It wasn't just my recording that tipped the scales. Apparently, a colleague of Jeremy's, burdened by guilt, confessed to an affair with Julia. This revelation, coupled with the damning evidence I'd provided, painted a grim picture of her character. There were other reasons, I gathered, that cemented her defeat in the custody battle, reasons that, while unspoken, hinted at deeper flaws in her ability to parent responsibly. While a part of me might have once felt a pang of sympathy for her, that sentiment had long since evaporated. Julia's downfall was a consequence of her own choices, a reckoning for her moral failings. The sting of betrayal still lingered for me, a bitter reminder of the years I'd wasted on someone who turned out to be utterly deplorable. Yet, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that karma had finally caught up with her, delivering the justice she so richly deserved. The news of Julia's loss didn't come from our old college circle, which only underscored how far I'd drifted from that group. I no longer kept in touch with those so-called mutual friends, and it was through someone outside that old clique that I learned of her fate. It was clear that gossip had spread like wildfire, with people dissecting Julia's missteps behind her back. It wasn't surprising, really, those friends we once shared had never been paragons of loyalty. Their willingness to talk about her now, just as they'd failed to support me when I needed them, revealed their true colors. Back when Julia's infidelity came to light, they hadn't held her to the same standard they did me, despite my mistake being a fleeting lapse in judgment fueled by alcohol. Their skewed priorities were evident then, and their behavior now only confirmed what I'd long suspected: they weren't true friends to anyone. They thrived on drama, quick to judge and quicker to gossip, their allegiances shifting with the wind. Julia's current predicament, while unfortunate for her, brought me an undeniable sense of vindication. She was reaping the consequences of her actions, and I couldn't help but feel a quiet joy in that. Reflecting on the past, I couldn't ignore how much had changed since our college days. Back then, Julia and I had been inseparable, part of a tight-knit group that seemed unbreakable. We shared laughter, late-night study sessions, and dreams of the future, blissfully unaware of the cracks that would eventually tear us apart. I had invested so much of myself in that relationship, believing her to be someone worth building a life with. The betrayal, when it came, was a gut punch, a slow, painful realization that the person I'd trusted most was capable of such duplicity. Her affair wasn't just a personal slight, it was a violation of everything I thought we stood for. To make matters worse, our mutual friends' response, or lack thereof, added salt to the wound. They didn't rally around me, didn't call her out for her actions. Instead, they tiptoed around the truth, their neutrality feeling like a betrayal in itself. My drunken text to Jeremy, while a mistake, paled in comparison to Julia's calculated deceit, yet they treated us as if our sins were equal. That hypocrisy still stung, a reminder of how easily people could abandon fairness when it suited them. The recording I sent Jeremy was a turning point, though I hadn't anticipated its full impact at the time. It was a piece of evidence I'd stumbled upon almost by accident, a moment of clarity captured in the midst of chaos. I hadn't planned to use it myself, but I knew it could help Jeremy make his case. When I sent it, I did so with no strings attached, trusting he would know what to do with it. The fact that it contributed to Julia's loss in court was both surprising and validating. It wasn't about revenge, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of satisfaction. It was about truth, about ensuring that the reality of who Julia was came to light. The confession from Jeremy's colleague only amplified that truth, exposing her infidelity in a way that left no room for excuses. Combined with whatever other factors the court considered, it was enough to strip her of custody, leaving her with only supervised visits to her son. The weight of that outcome wasn't lost on me. Losing a child, even partially, is a profound consequence, one that would force anyone to confront their failings. For Julia, it was a mirror held up to her choices, reflecting a reality she could no longer dodge. The gossip that followed didn't surprise me, though it did highlight the fickle nature of our former friends. They weren't just talking about Julia, they were reveling in her downfall, sharing the details with anyone who would listen. It was the kind of behavior I'd come to expect from them, quick to pounce on someone's misfortune, especially when it made for a juicy story. I couldn't help but wonder what they'd said about me when my own world fell apart. Had they dissected my drunken mistake with the same zeal, or had they brushed it off because it didn't carry the same scandalous weight as Julia's actions? Either way, their willingness to gossip about her now only confirmed their lack of loyalty. True friends don't revel in someone's pain, even if that person has made mistakes. They don't pick sides based on who's the most entertaining to talk about. Our college group had always been a house of cards, held together by convenience rather than genuine connection. Julia's fall was just the latest gust to topple it. As I processed the news, I found myself reflecting on the broader implications of Julia's situation. Her loss wasn't just about custody or infidelity, it was a culmination of choices that had eroded her character over time. I didn't know the full extent of the other reasons that led to her defeat in court, but I could guess. Julia had always had a knack for bending the truth, for prioritizing her own desires over the needs of others. It was a trait I'd overlooked in the early days, charmed by her confidence and charisma. But those same qualities had a dark side, one that became impossible to ignore once her true nature surfaced. The fact that she'd cheated on Jeremy, that she'd neglected her responsibilities as a mother, wasn't entirely shocking in hindsight. It was a pattern, one that I'd been too close to see until it was too late. Now, with the clarity of distance, I could see her for who she was, a person who prioritized herself above all else, consequences be damned. For my part, I was ready to move on. The drama with Julia, Jeremy, and our former friends had consumed enough of my energy. I'd made my peace with my own mistakes, including that ill-advised text, and I'd done what I could to set things right by giving Jeremy the recording. The rest was out of my hands. Julia's downfall, while satisfying in its own way, wasn't something I wanted to dwell on. It was a chapter closed, a lesson learned about trust, loyalty, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who shared my values. Our old friends had shown their true colors, and I had no interest in reconnecting with them. As for Julia, I wished her no ill will, but I couldn't muster much sympathy either. She'd made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. For me, the path forward was clear: focus on my own growth, leave the past behind, and let karma handle the rest.